Okay, so this is some basic revision for Unit 2. And what do I want to focus on here? Well, first of all, Unit 2 is all about macroeconomics. That means we're taking the entire economy and we're considering every economic activity, all business activity, all consumer activity within the entire economy. For the layman, we talk about an economy being a country. Okay, so let's assume that we're dealing with a single country when we're looking at macroeconomics for one economy. Okay, so you'll see some slight differences between this and your Unit 1 diagrams for microeconomics. Okay, the first big difference are the labels. Okay, aggregate demand. Aggregate simply means we're adding up all of the consumer demand in all of the markets throughout that entire economy. And that gives us what we call aggregate demand. That is our focus for this particular video. What is meant by aggregate demand? Okay. Next, you'll see that this across the bottom, instead of being quantity, as we would see in a microeconomics diagram, this is output. Okay. Now, the output method of measuring the size of an economy is also considered to be what we call GDP, gross domestic product, the total value of all goods and services produced in a given time frame within an economy. Okay. Now you'll see some other differences as well. We've got here short-run aggregate demand, aggregate supply. Okay, so that's all of the firms in all of the industries. Okay, it's not just within one industry or one market. And across this axis, instead of looking at price, we're looking at average price levels or average prices. Okay, so we can use this. This is very useful on this side because we can use this to understand inflation or deflation. Okay, this we can also use to understand economic growth or economic decline. And we can also use it to help us to understand levels of employment or unemployment. Okay, but the purpose of this particular video is to focus on this concept, aggregate demand. Okay, now aggregate demand is made up of four major components.
So are we doing SAT or this?
SAT. So for me, I want to break this down into these four major components. We've got consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Okay, and we'll look at these in just a slight bit of detail. So, consumption. First of all, understand what consumption means. Okay, it means that people are going out buying products and services and consuming them. Okay, it is as simple as that. It's also known as consumer spending, or it could be called consumer expenditure. Okay, so the first of those components is consumption. The second of those components is investment. Investment is made by firms. Okay, so this is capital investment by firms. Okay, as a business wants to get bigger, it will invest capital in certain things. Okay, so think about it. It might be buying more machinery. They might be investing in new buildings. They might be investing in new vehicles. Something which is normally a fixed asset. They'll be buying things in order to get bigger. Okay, where do they get the money from for that investment? Normally, they will borrow that money. Okay, or it might be from previous profits, but it is money that is being accessed externally, normally. Okay, and that you'll see the significance of that a little bit later. Okay, thirdly, you've got G. G stands for government spending or government expenditure. This is public finance. Okay, this is investment in infrastructure, investment in healthcare, investment in education, paying for pensions, paying for unemployment benefits, paying for subsidies, This is all the money that the government spends in the economy when it is employing people or investing in new projects. Okay, the public sector makes up quite a big part of aggregate demand. Okay, so be aware that if you've got a government that follows a certain political view, it might invest more. If it follows a different political view, it might invest less. Okay, but that will have a direct impact on the aggregate demand level in the economy. Okay, and lastly, there's a little bit of calculations to do here, but nothing mathematically difficult. We've got x minus m, what we call net exports. Okay, let's break that down a little bit. Okay, so x represents revenue from exports. So when a country sells products to a foreign country, another country, they receive revenue for those products or services, right? So that is a positive number. They receive revenue for their exports. We then take away the spending on imports, and that's what M represents, spending on imports. Okay, now this is also known as something like the trade balance in the balance of payments. It's part of the current account in the balance of payments. The balance of payments we'll come on to a little bit later. But what we need to know is that our net exports make up part of our aggregate demand. Okay, so that's a basic introduction into aggregate demand. We're going to look in much more detail at each one of these four components and what might influence the level of each of these components. So I'll give you an example. If consumer spending increases, consumption increases, we will see a shift in aggregate demand. A shift in aggregate demand, which creates a new equilibrium. That new equilibrium shows us inflation. Prices in the economy have increased. We have inflation, okay? And it also shows us that output in the economy has increased. We're actually experiencing economic growth. We have a greater level of gross domestic product. Okay, so we're going to look at each of these components separately, and we're going to look and see what might influence the level of consumption, the level of investment, the level of government spending, and the level of net exports. Okay, but keep an eye open for those videos. They'll be coming up over the next few days.